So I wouldn't be that mean to read that teeny tiny chapter, teasing that the author's saying he's not going to read on, but then he's decided to go get that chocolate and come back and finish the story, because as you can see, we've got lots left to read. So I'm going to have to come straight back and read chapter 18. And the title of this chapter is It Was a Dark and Stormy Night. Really, it was dark and stormy. As if the weather itself had conspired to turn our tale into a ghost story. Or as if, and this seems slightly more plausible, Miss Morvay somehow controlled the skies and was using them to obscure the events of the evening. In any case, the weather makes my job easier. It creates a proper mood. Like the location of the street corner on which Cass was waiting. With all the rain, you could hardly have seen her anyway. For Cass, sadly, the weather didn't make things any easier, only wetter. And colder. Teeth chattering, she stood under a street lamp, clutching her backpack to her chest for warmth. Not that it was much help, the backpack was no drier than her clothing. It had been difficult figuring out what to wear. After her phone conversation with Miss Morvay, Cass had gone back home again and rifled through her mother's closets. She even tried on a dress for the first time in over a year. But despite her recent growth spurt, she still looked like she was playing dress-up when she put her mother's clothes on. She'd also considered borrowing Amber's Honorary Skeleton Sister t-shirt, but she couldn't bring herself to call and ask for it. Plus, Cash realised a real skeleton sister probably wouldn't wear the t-shirt anyway. Finally, she chose to wear her casual jeans and sweatshirt, but she modified the outfit with a pair of furry boots her mother had bought for one of their never-taken ski trips. They didn't look exactly like the fuzzy boots that Amber and her friends wore, but they were close enough. I know, at the beginning of this book, I told you Cass would never wear boots like those. I was forgetting she might wear them as part of a disguise. Now, she regretted the boots. Not only were they too big, they were soaked through. Her feet sloshed around in them, and they splattered when she walked. She felt like Bigfoot. Her other new accessory was equally impractical for the weather. A pair of sunglasses. But even Cass knew that celebrities wore sunglasses all the time, indoors as well as out. Also, they helped disguise her face, which, presumably, is why celebrities wear them. Had Cass asked me, I would have told her what I always tell people who are trying to go incognito. Lose the shades. They only make you look more conspicuous. Cass felt certain that neither Miss Morvay nor Dr. L would recognise her. They had seen her face for only a second, but it was best to be careful. Her backpack, it goes without saying, she never considered leaving, never mind whether a skeleton sister would have worn it or not. Cass thought wistfully about the hot pot of tea that Grandpa Larry would undoubtedly be making on a rainy night like this one. She wished she stopped at the fire station for a cup before heading out to meet the Midnight Sun limousine. Instead, she phoned her grandfather's and told them she was staying overnight at Max Ernest's house to work on their volcano experiment, for which the due date kept being conveniently postponed. She slept there all the time, she added. And her mother had already spoken to Max Ernest's parents, so there was no reason to ask her mother's permission. Her grandfathers had asked a few questions and demanded Max Ernest's phone number, but they were still feeling so guilty for making her upset about the Symphony of Smells that they hadn't given her much trouble. The hardest part was having to listen to Grandpa Larry and Grandpa Wayne argue about whether she should make her volcano erupt with Alka-Seltzer or dry ice. You trust me, right? Cass had asked. She felt a little guilty herself playing on their guilt, but she needed to get them off the phone. Of course we do, they assured her. Then she had called her mother and told her pretty much the same thing. Except to her mother, she said it was her grandfathers who had spoken to Max Ernest's parents, so there was no reason to phone them. And don't call me at 9 tonight, OK? Cass added. Max Ernest and I are going to be working. Just don't stay up too late, said her mother. All right, Cass. Uh-huh. Promise? Uh-huh. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Yes, Mum. Yes, what? Yes, I promise. OK, I love you. Me too. Me too what? I love you too, sheesh! Although she and Max Ernest weren't collaborators anymore, it was sort of cheating to ask for his help. Cass had no choice but to call him, too. She had to warn him that he might hear from her grandfathers or even her mum. She'd been very businesslike with Max Ernest, she thought. She told him where she'd hidden the magician's notebook, and she gave him all the information that she had about the Midnight Sun. And she didn't say anything about his abandoning their mission or being a coward or a traitor. Somehow, with all the activity, she'd forgotten that she'd been the one to end their relationship. He didn't say much at all for a change, which was fine with her. Hopefully, he would be able to play it off like she was staying with him, at least until the morning. Then, well, everyone will start looking for her, probably. But would it be too late? She didn't see the limousine until it splashed to a stop in front of her, glistening with raindrops. As Cass waited, the driver got out and walked towards her, heedless of the storm, I apologise. The driver was big and tall and shadowed in darkness, save for a pair of white gloves gleaming in the night. Was it Dr. L? Every instinct Cass had told her to run, but something that was not quite bravery and not quite fear and not quite knowledge of Benjamin's plight kept her rooted to the spot. Miss Skeleton? The voice was gruff, but not as deep as Cass expected. Yeah, that's me, said Cass as forcefully as she could. I'm Daisy. Daisy stepped into the light, revealing a decidedly unflower-like but undisputedly female voice. Without another word, she opened the limousine's back door and beckoned Cass inside with a gloved hand. Reminding herself she was a celebrity and not the type of person to be intimidated by a limousine driver, even if that driver was the tallest woman she'd ever seen, Cass held her head high and climbed in as confidently as if she rode in limousines every day and Daisy were her own personal chauffeur. Only after she settled into her plush velvet seat did Cass notice how violently her hands were shaking. She had to sit on them to get them to stop. Hours passed in silence, Cass barely able to see out of the foggy windows. Generally, she could tell they were heading upwards, but the limousine made so many turns that she lost all sense of direction. Too late. She thought of Hansel and Gretel and how they're supposed to leave a trail of crumbs when you journey into a forest. If nobody came for her, how would she find her way back? She told herself to stay calm, but doubts kept creeping into her head. Previously, she'd been so focused on getting to the Midnight Sun that she hadn't stopped to think what she would do once she got inside. Now that she appeared really to be on her way, she wondered how she would find Benjamin, and how she would get him out. In the back of her mind lurked other, darker questions. Why had Dr. L and Miss Morvay taken Benjamin? What did they want from him? What had happened to the magician's brother Luciano? Would she find him, too, still a prisoner after so much time? He would be an old man by now, his circus days long gone. And what about the magician? Pietro, himself? What was the terrible secret he had discovered? Was she strong enough to face it if she had to? Suddenly, the limousine rounded a turn and broke through the clouds. Cass wiped the fog off the window next to her and looked outside. The sky above was now clear and starry, suggestive no longer of ghost stories, but rather of science fiction and space travel. A perfect sky for spotting comets or for studying the constellations, if only Cass had the time and the inclination. Unfortunately, she had neither. Cass couldn't tell much about their location, except that they were near the top of a mountain. Below them, a vast white blanket of clouds, illuminated by the moon, spread out as far as she could see. The limousine made another sharp turn, then descended into a small hidden valley. "Look!" Daisy commanded, breaking the silence. Only then did Cass become aware of the warm glow suffusing the landscape around them. Craning her neck, she could just make out the source of the glow, an intense golden light peeking over the edge of the mountains. It looked like a sunrise, but it couldn't have been. The time was just before midnight. "There it is," said Daisy. "The Midnight Sun." And chapter 19 is called The Midnight Sun. We'll find out how Cass gets on next time.